MAGA VP JD Vance has recently been doing a string of interviews only to continuously get embarrassed time after time, from his inability to answer simple questions to getting exposed for telling outright lies, and he recently went on ABC where it was much of the same. So I wanted to look over a few of these clips and provide the additional context and fact checks to his lies.
Would Donald Trump go after his political opponents? He suggested that in the past.
Martha, he was president for 4 years, and he didn't go after his political opponents. You know who did go after her political opponents? Kamala Harris, who has tried to arrest everything from pro-life activists to her political opponents.
He said those people who cheated will be prosecuted
as a weapon against people. Well, he said that people who violated our election laws will be prosecuted. I think that's the administration of law. He didn't say people are going to go to jail because they disagree with me. That has, in fact, been the administration and the policy of Kamala Harris, Martha.
Yeah, so there's quite a few things wrong with this one. First, it's an outright lie that Trump didn't go after his political opponents in his first administration. He wanted to prosecute Comey and Hillary, ran on locking Hillary up, and then opened 3 investigations into her and Bill once he got into office. It was the head of the FBI who once investigated said, hey, there was no motive for wrongdoing here, which again, as I always point out, if you think that Hillary should have been prosecuted and locked up for what she did, then you have to think that what Trump did with his documents, he deserves getting locked up because it was 10 times worse. Second, he is directly alluding to going after Democrats right now in this campaign. He's running on it again. And when he brings up the 2020 election as if that's like justification for doing it, there's no evidence of any wrongdoing from any Democrats. So yes, it's just political targeting because he's upset that they beat him. And if he thinks that it's administration of law to go after those who violated election law, why does he defend Donald Trump then, who is the only person with an election interference case where he doesn't deny what he did either, just says he needs immunity for it? And lastly, no, Kamala nor Biden have gone after political opponents. Trump's cases have been at the state level where they don't even communicate with the federal DOJ. So there's no connection to Biden's DOJ. That's also just a misnomer anyway. And even in his federal cases, they're brought by special counsel and in no way connected to Biden or Harris, who refuse to even speak on the cases. They say, let the courts handle it as they focus on politics. So this is all just a sham where, again, every accusation is a confession from MAGA.
I'm just going to assume that if I ask you 50 times whether he lost the election, you would not acknowledge that he did. Is that correct?
Martha, you asked this question. I've been asked this question 10 times in the past couple of weeks. Of course, Donald Trump and I believe there were problems in 2020. You haven't asked about inflation.
No, I'm sorry. Let's stick to this.
People, I know. The American people want us to talk about how to make their lives better. They don't want us to.
Why won't you say that?
Because, Martha, I believe that in 2020, when big tech firms were censoring American citizens, that created very serious problems. And by the way, Martha, you're a journalist. You represent the American media. Look at the polling on this. A lot of Americans feel like they were silenced in the run-up to the 2020 election. That is such a bigger issue. That fundamental problem than me and Donald Trump talking about it. And unfortunately, Martha,
I don't understand why you won't just say it if you believe it.
Won't just say what? That I think the 2020 election had some problems? I've said that repeatedly.
Did Donald Trump lose? That's the question, and you know that's the question.
He keeps getting asked because he keeps refusing to answer, and Americans deserve to know and hear and see firsthand that the candidates of one of the 2 major political parties refuse to acknowledge when they lost a free and fair democratic process, because that is a threat to our democracy. As we covered in the last video where he said this, it was, again, what he's speaking of, one article that was censored on one social media for 24 hours because, and context is important, because Russians had just interfered in our 2016 election. This was proven by our security intelligence, by Senate Republicans as well. So while they didn't know if it was misinformation, they censored it to find out if it was true. It was censored for 24 hours and then it was let posted. Right now, however, a JD Vance dossier has been censored for an extended period of time, and journalists like Ken Klippenstein have been banned from X for posting it. Yet MAGA doesn't care about that at all. I wonder why. It's not like they're biased or anything, right? But we're supposed to believe that one article on one social media for one day is a major election interference, especially when you look at the polling on the matter, like actually look at the polling, like he's trying to allude to, knowing that none of his supporters will. The only people who cared were Republicans who followed the story. So they were non-Biden voters already, and it wasn't even a majority of Republicans. Independents and Democrats both could have cared less. It's just another nothing burger from MAGA to defend their own horrendous actions of attempted election interference by their candidate by trying to point a finger at someone else. It's like little bro gets caught stealing and instantly tries to tell on big bro, but big bro hasn't stolen anything.
Pentagon officials say that active duty troops were staged and ready to go before being called upon and were instantly out the door. So President Trump, former President Trump, is saying things that aren't true about that money being withheld from Republican areas.
Well, Martha, I think you're actually confusing staging of resources from the rapid response of the U.S. military. I mean, look, in FEMA's defense, there are things after this hurricane that FEMA simply could not do. You actually need military command and control. You need military resources deployed to the area. And I think all the president has said is, frankly, what some of Kamala Harris's surrogates have said, which is that if these areas were a little bit more democratic, maybe Kamala Harris would have focused on them more. That acknowledgement is not to attack, frankly, the good folks of FEMA. It's to suggest that Americans are feeling left behind by their government, which they are, Martha.
So instead of acknowledge any of the lies, instead of maybe saying, well, he was wrong here a little bit because he can't do that or else Trump would drop him from his administration, he just runs defense for him, which is, you know, you have to say, like, what an administration are these guys? Again, Trump just wanted a yes man, not someone who would moderate or mediate his radical views. Every Republican governor affected, every Republican mayor affected, state and city officials, they've all came out and said the response from the government and from FEMA have been spectacular. Record amounts of people have both applied and been accepted for aid. Military and other personnel have been dispatched to their full capacity to each area. Harris and Biden have both visited the affected areas multiple times. Harris just helped pack diapers and aid boxes. Biden just toured Florida Republicans before dispatching additional services and aid to the places they took him and said they needed more. It's frankly un-American, unpatriotic to be able to say, our government can handle these tragedies well and did a good job responding to these tragedies just because it's the Democrats doing it. It's horrendously immoral to try and pretend, well, we do it better when you couldn't, right? It's also why you never hear them say what they do differently, because there isn't anything to do differently. They just have to allude that enough isn't being done. They're playing on the emotions of people who have been affected by tragedies, who are getting every resource that they need, that they have at their disposal, by saying, hey, we would give you more, we would do better, when Trump is the only candidate who has actually withheld aid from both California and North Carolina, specifically because they were Democratic states. It's asinine that this level of hypocrisy, misinformation, lying, whatever you want to call it, is normalized in today's political sphere.